hungry monster, built with steel bones, built with cement flesh. You're a monster, built to devour innocent native children. You're a cold-hearted monster, cold as the cement floors. You have no love, no gentle atmosphere. Your ugly face grooved with red bricks. Your monster eyes glare from grimy windows. Monster eyes so evil. Monster eyes watching terrified children cower with shame. I hate you, residential school. I hate you. You're a slimy monster, oozing in the shadows of my past. Go away, leave me alone. You're following me wherever I go. You're in my dreams, in my memories. Go away, monster, go away.
Go away, monster, go away. This is an outcome of survivors from residential schools. And I've read a couple articles speaking on that. This is one, it was a poem by Dennis Saddleman, and I was just a little expert of it. You could tell from his voice how angry he is, and it manifests so much that he wrote a poem about it, and to this day people are still talking about it, and it's still an issue. And Residential School Legacy, Chelsea Vowell, she wrote this excerpt explaining her anger within residential school systems, and she experienced it secondhand. She wasn't a victim, but she sure was someone who, like all of us, greatly affected from it. And so she talks about the TRC, which is short for Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which was established in 2008, and it looked into the legacy of the residential schools, and I believe it is situated in Manitoba. So that's where all the books are stored or things. I believe that's what I remember reading. And the truth comes from survivors, so we can't have reconciliation without truth, which to me it makes sense, because I don't know what happened. All I know is from the truth that the survivors are telling us what happened, from poetry, from angry essays. That's how we understand truth and reconciliation, because we have to understand the truth to reconcile. And so speaking of that, the calls of actions were created, and that is for us to rebuild our relationships with the Indigenous people, and Indigenous people rebuilding relationships with us non-Indigenous people. And in between some time, like 1986 and 1994, churches stated an apology for their role in residential school systems. And a fact that I found kind of interesting, that Manitoba, PEI, Newfoundland, and Quebec, they don't offer Indigenous studies in the school systems, in like elementary or high school. That's not really a thing there, which I kind of found confusing, because I read in the article that Truth and Reconciliation was the books and stuff are in Manitoba. So why isn't that a priority in Manitoba? I'd have to read more into that, but that's just my thoughts on that one. For another one, it wasn't working, so I skipped that rating on that. But I did watch a documentary, and it was pretty precious. It was called Birth of a Family. Now, that was a documentary based on a family that was separated from birth. They were between 2 and 6, or not even 6, I don't think. They were very young when they were separated from their mom. And so it took one of the women was named Betty Ann, and then she created this thing that she would find her siblings. And so they found them over several decades. She was in her 50s when they saw her siblings for the first time. It was pretty heartwarming when they all got off the plane and hugged each other and listened to their life stories, and it was like meeting someone new for the first time. But they were brother and sisters, and so they all grew up in separate areas and raised differently. And so before all that happens, they give a little expert. Between 1955 and 1985, the Canadian government moved roughly 20,000 Indigenous children from their homes from the 60s scoop. So people it's kind of similar to residential schools. So the 60 Scoop is they were taken away from their families. 4 children, like I was saying before, were taken away from a single Dene mother. And so they don't know who their mother really was because they were taken away at such a young age. And in the video, it goes along with their weekend that they're going, getting to know each other, going for food, laughing. And a part of the video, it shows them they weren't sure because they were experiencing a cultural thing together, and none of them grew up like that. It was taken away from them at birth when they were gone. And their families didn't practice like Aboriginal culture for them. They don't know drum ceremonies. They probably weren't go to a powwow, and they weren't even sure like, what do we do? So they did research, and they gave tobacco to the elder as an offering, which you should do. And so it was awful because that part of their heritage and their identity was removed, and they were like just torn apart because they didn't understand their culture. They didn't know who they were. And at 58, that's pretty heartbreaking when you don't know your identity. And so that was a very moving documentary, and I recommend someone to watch it. I definitely am gonna let my students in the future watch that documentary. It is really, really good. And then there's gonna be a part 2 for my third discussion on the last article.